The rain had been falling steadily for hours, turning the streets into dark mirrors that reflected the neon glow of the city. Inside the Olive Branch, a modest family restaurant tucked between a hardware store and a laundromat, the warmth of cooking oil and fresh bread offered shelter from the storm outside. It was nearly 9 in the evening, and the dinner rush had finally subsided into a gentle hum of conversation and clinking dishes. Maya wiped down the counter with practiced efficiency, her movements careful and deliberate. At 26, she had learned to make herself small in spaces where others expected her to serve. Her uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron, was spotless despite the long shift. She wore no jewelry except for a thin silver chain her mother had given her before passing away 3 years ago. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and though her face bore the exhaustion of someone who worked 2 jobs, there was something unbreakable in her eyes. The door chimed, and Maya looked up to see a group of 4 entering. 3 men in expensive suits, and a woman in a designer dress that probably cost more than Maya's rent for 6 months. They moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, never waiting in line, never wondering if they could afford dessert. The man at the front, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying temples and a Rolex that caught the light, surveyed the restaurant with the expression of someone inspecting a property they were considering purchasing. Maya recognized that look. She had seen it 1,000 times in her years of service work. It was the look that saw past people, that calculated worth in dollars and cents, that measured human beings against balance sheets. "Good evening," Maya said, approaching their table with menus tucked under her arm. Her voice was steady, professional. "Welcome to the Olive Branch. Can I start you off with something to drink?" The man, Mr. Ashwin Kapoor, she would later learn from his credit card, barely glanced at her. "Water. No ice. Make sure the glasses are clean," he said this while looking at his phone, his thumb scrolling through what appeared to be stock prices. "Of course, sir." Maya set down the menus and turned toward the kitchen. "And you?" he called after her, still not looking up. "What's your name?" "Maya, sir." "Maya." He repeated it, like he was testing the word in his mouth. "Tell me, Maya, how long have you worked here?" 3 years, sir. 3 years. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were cold, appraising. "And this is where you want to be? Carrying plates for people like us?" The table went quiet. The woman in the designer dress, Mrs. Kapoor, presumably looked uncomfortable, her fingers fidgeting with the stem of the menu. One of the other men coughed softly, but Mr. Kapoor seemed genuinely curious, as if he had asked about the weather. Maya felt something tighten in her chest, but her face remained calm. "I'm grateful for the work, sir. I'll get your water." She walked to the kitchen with her head high, though her hands trembled slightly as she filled the glasses. Through the small window that looked out onto the dining area, she watched Mr. Kapoor laugh at something one of his companions said, completely unbothered by the small cruelty he had just inflicted. This was not new to Maya. She had endured worse. There was the customer who had left a single penny as a tip, with a note that read, "Get a real job." There was the woman who had sent back her food 4 times before finally announcing it was acceptable for this type of establishment. There was the man who had snapped his fingers at her like she was a dog, then complained to the manager when she didn't respond quickly enough. But tonight felt different. Perhaps it was the exhaustion. Perhaps it was because she had spent the morning at the hospital, sitting beside her younger brother Arjun as he underwent another round of physical therapy for the leg he had injured in a construction accident 6 months ago. Perhaps it was because she had just received another rejection letter from the teaching program she had applied to, the 3rd program this year, to tell her that her credentials were insufficient, despite her perfect grades in the 2 night classes she had managed to complete. Or perhaps it was because somewhere in the back of her mind she could hear another voice from another time, saying similar words. "You deserve better than this. You're meant for more. I'll make sure you get everything you dream of." Maya pushed the memory away and carried the water glasses back to the table. For the next hour she served them with perfect professionalism. She took their orders: expensive steaks, imported wine, appetizers that cost more than she made in a day. She brought each course with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, and she endured. Mr. Kapoor seemed to take particular pleasure in testing her. When she brought the appetizers, he examined them with theatrical scrutiny. "Are these fresh? They look like they've been sitting out." "They were prepared just now, sir. Our chef sources ingredients daily from—" "I didn't ask for the restaurant's marketing pitch. I asked if they're fresh." "Yes, sir. They are." He took a bite, chewed slowly, then nodded. "Acceptable." When the main courses arrived, He sent his steak back. Too rare, then too well done. Then the temperature was fine but the seasoning was wrong. Each time Maya accepted the plate without argument and returned to the kitchen, where the chef, an older man named Hassan who had worked in restaurants for 40 years, shook his head and remade the dish without complaint. Some people, Hassan muttered as he plated the third attempt, think money gives them the right to treat others like servants in their personal kingdom. Maya said nothing, but she thought about how right he was. The worst moment came when the bill arrived. Mr. Kapoor pulled out a thick money clip, gold, naturally, and made a show of counting out bills, $100 notes, crisp and new. He laid them on the table one by one, slowly, deliberately, while Maya stood waiting with the check folder. Tell me, Maya, he said, still counting. How much do you make in a month? Working here, carrying plates. Maya's jaw tightened. Sir, if there's anything else I can get for you, it's a simple question. Humor me. She could have walked away. Should have, perhaps. But something in his tone made her answer. Enough to pay my bills, sir. Enough to pay your bills, he repeated, amused. He finished counting. The meal came to $243, and placed exactly $245 on the table. $2 for a tip on a nearly $250 meal. You see, this is the difference between people like you and people like me. People like me understand the value of money, because we know how to make it. People like you, he gestured vaguely at her apron. The restaurant, her entire existence. You just spend your lives hoping someone will give you some. The woman in the designer dress, Mrs. Kapoor, stood abruptly. Ashwin, that's enough. Let's go. But Mr. Kapoor wasn't finished. He picked up one of the $100 bills he had set aside and held it up between two fingers, as if offering it to Maya. You want to know what real money looks like? What it feels like to not worry about bills? Maya stared at the bill, then at his face. Something shifted in her expression. Something hard and ancient, like bedrock beneath soil. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but clear as crystal. I know exactly what it looks like, Mr. Kapoor. I also know what it costs. She turned and walked away, leaving the money on the table, leaving Mr. Kapoor with his hand still extended, leaving behind the small, cruel moment he had tried to create. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Hassan looked at her with concern, but said nothing. He had worked with her long enough to know when to give her space. Maya's mind drifted, as it often did in moments of quiet, to a time 7 years ago, to a different version of herself, younger, softer, still believing that the world rewarded kindness with kindness. She had been 19, working at a bookstore near the university while studying for her teaching degree. The pay was minimal, but she loved being surrounded by books, loved helping students find what they needed, loved the quiet dignity of the work. That's where she had met Rohan Kapoor. He had come in looking for a textbook on corporate finance, and she had helped him find it. He was charming, educated, full of dreams about changing the business world. But what struck her most was how different he seemed from the other wealthy students. He noticed her, really noticed her, asked her name, asked about her studies, asked what she thought about the books she recommended. They started talking, then having coffee, then something more. For 2 years they were inseparable. She helped him study for his exams, listened to his anxieties about living up to his father's expectations, supported him through the pressure of being the eldest son in a powerful business family. He told her she was his refuge, the one person who saw him as Rohan, not as Ashwin Kapoor's heir. When his father's company faced a crisis, a scandal that threatened to destroy the family business, it was Maya who sat with Rohan through sleepless nights, who reminded him of his worth when he felt like a failure, who gave him the confidence to propose the restructuring plan that ultimately saved the company. She spent her savings to help him when his father cut off his allowance as punishment for the initial failures. She gave everything because she believed in him, because she loved him, because he had promised her that they would build a life together. And then the crisis passed. The company recovered. The Kapoor name was restored, and Rohan changed. It started small, cancelled dates, because of business meetings, fewer calls, a distance in his eyes when they were together. Then came the day he invited her to an expensive restaurant. Nothing like the Olive Branch, but one of those places where the menu had no prices, and the waiters wore white gloves. He told her that his family had arranged a marriage. A girl from another business family, appropriate wealth, appropriate connections, appropriate everything. He said it wasn't personal. But she had to understand the pressures he faced, that he would always be grateful for what she had done for him, but that he had responsibilities beyond love. She had sat across from him, watching the man she had supported and believed in, and realized that she was seeing him clearly for the first time. He wasn't giving her up for duty or responsibility. He was trading her in for convenience, for social acceptance, for a life that wouldn't require him to defend his choices to his father. "I never promised you anything," he had said, when she asked about all those late-night conversations, all those plans they had made. You knew what this was, but she had promised him everything, and she had delivered. She left that restaurant with nothing but her dignity. She stopped answering his calls, deleted his messages, removed every trace of him from her life. And then she did something that surprised even herself. She got stronger. She finished her degree, not the prestigious program she had planned, but a smaller one she could afford. She took the job at the Olive Branch, and a second job tutoring high school students. She helped her brother when he got injured, became the backbone of her small family. And slowly, painfully, she built a life that belonged entirely to her. She heard through mutual acquaintances that Rohan had married the appropriate girl, that he had taken over significant portions of his father's business, that he was successful, powerful, exactly what Ashwin Kapoor had wanted his son to become. She told herself she didn't care. Most days, she even believed it. Maya opened her eyes and pushed off from the wall. Her shift was almost over. She just needed to clear Mr. Kapoor's table, clean up, and go home. But when she walked back out to the dining room, Mr. Kapoor was still there. Alone now, his companions had left. He was sitting at the table, staring at the money he had laid out, and there was something odd about his expression. Maya approached cautiously. "Sir, we're closing soon. If you need anything—" "Do you know who I am?" he asked suddenly. "Mr. Kapoor, sir. Your credit card." "No. Do you know who I am?" He looked up at her, and for the first time that evening his eyes weren't cold. They were searching, almost desperate. "My son, Rohan. You knew him. You—" Maya's blood went cold. "I didn't recognize you at first," Mr. Kapoor continued. "But the way you looked at me when I was— He trailed off, then started again. "My son talks about you sometimes, when he's had too much to drink, when he thinks no one is listening. He talks about the girl who believed in him, the girl who helped him when I couldn't." Maya wanted to run, wanted to tell him to leave, to take his money and his regrets and go, but something kept her rooted in place. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I see now what he saw. The strength, the dignity." Mr. Kapoor looked down at the money on the table. "I spent the evening trying to make you feel small because people like me, we think power comes from what we have. But you didn't flinch, didn't beg, didn't compromise who you are for a tip or approval or anything." He stood up, and Maya noticed that he seemed smaller somehow, diminished. "My son made a choice. I made that choice for him. If I'm being honest, I told him that you weren't suitable, that he needed someone who understood our world, and he listened to me, because he's my son, and because he's weak in ways I taught him to be weak." "Mr. Kapoor, let me finish." He pulled out his wallet and placed a business card on the table. "I own 17 restaurants across this city, high-end places, the kind where people like me go to feel important. I need managers who understand that hospitality isn't about money. It's about treating people with respect. People who won't flinch when some arrogant fool tries to buy their dignity for $2. Maya stared at the card. It was embossed, expensive, offering her a position with a salary that was triple what she made now. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're right. You know what money looks like, and you know what it costs. Most people only understand one or the other." He picked up all the cash from the table and held it out to her. "This belongs to you. I apologize for my behavior this evening. It was beneath both of us." Maya looked at the money, then at the card, then at this man who had spent the evening trying to humiliate her and was now offering her a way out of the life he had mocked. She took the money for the meal Hat was owed for service rendered. She left the business card on the table. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Kapoor," she said quietly. "But I don't need you to save me from anything. I've built my life exactly the way I wanted it, slowly, honestly, without compromising who I am. Your son could have been part of that life. He chose otherwise. That's not my loss. It's his." She picked up the $2 tip and held it for a moment. Then she placed it back on the table. "Keep this. Use it to remember that respect isn't something you can buy. It's something you earn by treating people like they matter. Not because of what they can do for you, but because they're human beings who deserve dignity. Mr. Kapoor stood there, and for a moment he looked like he might argue. Then he simply nodded. You would have been good for him. Good for all of us. I know, Maya said. But he wasn't ready to be good for me. She turned and walked back to the kitchen, leaving Ashwin Kapoor alone with his money and his regrets. 3 months later, Maya received her acceptance letter to the graduate teaching program at the State University. Full scholarship, based on her work experience and recommendations from the families she tutored. She would start in the fall. She heard through the same network of mutual acquaintances that Rohan's marriage was struggling, that he was unhappy, that he had asked about her. She deleted the message and didn't respond. 6 months after that, the Olive Branch received an offer to expand to 2 new locations. The owner, grateful for Maya's years of dedicated service, offered her a partnership stake and the chance to manage the new branches. She accepted. A year later, she was working on her thesis, a study on economic barriers to education and how to overcome them, when she received an invitation to speak at a business conference about servant leadership and dignity in the workplace. The invitation came from Mr. Ashwin Kapoor. She almost declined, but then she thought about all the young people working service jobs, enduring small cruelties from people who saw them as beneath notice. She thought about Hassan and the other staff at the Olive Branch, people who showed up every day with pride in their work despite the disrespect they faced. She accepted the invitation. On the day of the conference, she walked onto the stage in a simple but professional dress, carrying nothing but her notes and her story. The room was filled with business leaders, executives, people who controlled millions of dollars and thousands of lives. And she told them the truth. She told them about the cost of humiliation, about what it does to a person's spirit to be treated as less than human. She told them about the strength it takes to maintain dignity when someone is trying to buy it from you for pennies. She told them about the difference between power that comes from money and power that comes from character. She didn't name names, didn't point fingers, didn't need to. When she finished, the room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room rose in a standing ovation. Mr. Ashwin Kapoor was in the back row. He didn't clap, just nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement that needed no words. As Maya left the stage, a young woman approached her, probably in her early 20s, dressed in the uniform of the conference hotel. Thank you, the young woman whispered, for saying that, for reminding people that we matter. Maya shook her hand. You don't need anyone to remind you that you matter. You need to remind yourself, every single day, until you believe it so completely that no one can take it from you. The young woman nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away a little taller. 5 years later, Maya ran 3 successful restaurants, had completed her graduate degree, and had started a non-profit that provided educational support and job training for service industry workers. She never married, not because she was waiting for Rohan or anyone else, but because she had discovered something more valuable than romance. She had discovered her own completeness. She heard, eventually, that Rohan had divorced, that he had tried to reach out to her multiple times, that he had told people he had made the biggest mistake of his life. She never responded, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She had loved him once, had given him everything she had to give. But that girl, the one who had believed that love could overcome any obstacle, she didn't exist anymore. In her place was a woman who understood that some people enter your life to show you what you're capable of surviving, and some people leave your life to show you what you're capable of becoming. Rohan had been both, and Maya had become someone that everyone from former classmates to business leaders to her own staff had learned to respect, not fear in the sense of intimidation, but fear in the sense of profound respect. Fear in the sense that they knew she could not be bought, could not be swayed, could not be made to compromise the standards she had set for herself and others. She had become the girl everyone feared to cross, not because she was cruel, but because she was unbreakable. The last time Maya saw Mr. Ashwin Kapoor was at a charity fundraiser for educational initiatives. He was older, frailer, but his eyes were sharper than they had been that night at the Olive Branch. I wanted to apologize again, he said, approaching her during the cocktail hour. For that night, for many nights, actually, for the way I taught my son to see the world. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the arrogant man who had tried to humiliate her, but a father who had realized too late that he had taught his son the wrong lessons. Mr. Kapoor, she said gently, you don't need my forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself, and maybe teach the next generation something different. He nodded slowly. Rohan asks about you sometimes. He's trying to be better. Different. I hope he is, Maya said. And she meant it. Not for me, for himself. And for whoever comes after me. He says he never should have let you go. Maya smiled, a real smile, warm and without bitterness. He was right, but not for the reasons he thinks. He shouldn't have let me go because I deserved better than being someone's backup plan. I deserved to be chosen, not settled for. Every person deserves that. Mr. Kapoor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I built an empire, made millions, raised a son to take over that empire. But I'm standing here realizing that you, a girl I tried to humiliate over a $2 tip, you built something I never could. You built a life that doesn't require anyone else's validation. That's the real wealth, isn't it? It's one kind of wealth, Maya agreed. But it's the only kind that can't be taken from you. She excused herself and moved through the crowd, greeting colleagues, supporters, people whose lives she had touched. And as she walked, she thought about that night 7 years ago, standing in the kitchen of the Olive Branch, exhausted and humiliated, and wondering if this was all her life would ever be. She had been so wrong. That night had been a beginning, not an ending. The moment when she stopped waiting for someone else to validate her worth and started building it herself, brick by brick, day by day. He had left her for another, for status, for convenience, for all the wrong reasons. But she had become someone who understood that being left was not a rejection of her value. It was a revelation of his limitations. And in understanding that, she had become the girl everyone feared to cross, not because she sought revenge or power, but because she had claimed something far more precious, her own unshakable sense of self-worth. Moral. Money can buy comfort, luxury, and temporary power, but it cannot purchase character, integrity, or genuine human worth. True strength is not found in how much you have, but in who you become when everything is taken away. The greatest revenge against those who underestimate you is not to prove them wrong through bitterness or retaliation, but to prove them irrelevant through the life you build in their absence. Dignity cannot be bought or sold. It can only be maintained through consistent respect for yourself and others, regardless of circumstances. In the end, people may forget what you said, forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel, and more importantly, you will never forget how you chose to carry yourself when someone tried to make you feel small. That is the wealth that matters.